titled "How Fast Growing Scales Up Can Boost the Greek Economy." And with us, we have a very excellent team of exceptional speakers. Mr. Christos Dimas, who is the Deputy Minister for Research and Technology. Mr. Drake Bechrakis, President and CEO of Marwick Associates. Mr. Marina Hatsopoulos, Board Chair of the Levitronics Technologies. Mr. Georgia Mourla, she's a Deputy Chief Officer, Issuer for Relations for the Athens Stock Exchange. And moderator will be our Vice President of American Chamber, Vassilis Kafatos, Partner, Clients and Industries for the Deloitte Greece. Vassilis, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilya. Good evening and good morning to all of our guests from Greece and the US. It is my privilege and pleasure on behalf of the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce to welcome you to our timely and interesting discussion on fast-growing scale-ups to help the Greek economy forge ahead. We are honored to have with us today a group of distinguished speakers that Ilias has introduced. So I move directly to a very short introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, very recently we exited a long and severe economic crisis, and currently we are going through the coronavirus pandemic, a global crisis, redefining the concept of uncertainty and already functioning as a catalyst for major disruption and changes in society and economy. In the midst of this crisis lies great opportunity and necessity, I would add, necessity for our country to transition to a different economy, more resilient, extrovert, knowledge-based, innovative, and digital. The recently published Greek Economic Growth Plan sets the ground for such a transformational growth model that can leverage our country's assets and strengths. Most importantly, the highly educated human capital and also our entrepreneurship spirit that has led many Greeks to dare and thrive, many abroad. And this is where high value and innovative driven entrepreneurship comes to play as a spearhead for the establishment of this new growth model, as a driver of sustainable economic development with both financial and social benefits. Startups that have managed to break the early stage barrier and become high growth firms generate comparatively much more significant portion of employment and output. Scale-ups are more productive, more diverse, more innovative, international focus. Providing them with the appropriate framework support and networking would accelerate a bigger ecosystem, creating more quality jobs and more economic growth. Even during this pandemic, many scale-ups have demonstrated resilience and innovation. Much has been done lately in Greece to support entrepreneurship. The startup ecosystem in Greece, although young, shows good progress and prospects. What I believe should be an add-on to this effort is a clear focus also on strengthening and accelerating scale-ups, growth firms otherwise. Today, our panel, we will discuss this journey of fostering such an ecosystem with stakeholders of the scale-up ecosystem. And I would like to start from policy making, addressing the first question to Minister Dimas. During the last year, we have seen many government-driven initiatives to support new entrepreneurship and investments in startups, including the Elevate Gateway, the Innovation Center in Athens, various investment tax incentives for business angels, science and technology research expenses, super deduction provisions, just to name a few. Could you please elaborate on these initiatives and what are your plans ahead?
First of all, thank you very much. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to address today's event. We had three main goals. The first goal was to link research and innovation more effectively. The second, to increase R&D expenses and opportunities for young scientists and entrepreneurs. And the third was to improve the innovation scoreboard rankings in the European Innovation Scoreboard. So when I became Deputy Minister for Development and Investments 15 months ago, we didn't know how many startups we had in the country, in which sector they were, how many people they employed, what budgets they had. We absolutely had no information. And even if we wanted to legislate specific incentives for the startups, in reality, we didn't know to whom we were talking, which our audience. And there isn't a common definition about what company is a startup. And this is a problem that is not only present in Greece, but all around the world. So we started looking at best practices in other countries, and we decided that it's necessary to create a startup registry in the country. But we wanted to do more than that. So we did create Elevate Greece, which is the entry point to the Greek ecosystem, including startups, scale-ups, as we said, so early stage startups. Most of them in Greece are early stage startups, scale-ups, of course, incubator centers, accelerators, VC funds, but even companies that invest in innovation and R&D. Elevate Greece was launched 1.5 months ago. It is evolving quite rapidly, and it will be the main tool that will allow the Greek state, but also private actors, to give specific incentives to the innovation ecosystem. You also mentioned the innovation district in Athens. There isn't a physical ground in Greece, which is the main point of innovation in the country. So in other countries, we've seen that there is an innovation district. There was such an absence in Greece and in Southeastern Europe. We actually moved quite swiftly when we became government. We found a proper area in Piraeus, and we brought it under the auspices of the Ministry of Development and Investments. And I'm happy to announce that next week we will announce the first part of the bidding process formally, inviting potential investors and companies to start building and operating the innovation district, which is a ground where companies will have their R&D departments, startuppers and spin-offs will create synergies between them in order to produce innovative products and services. Finally, you also mentioned the initiatives that the Greek government implemented for business angels. It's the first time that the Greek state actually legislated tax incentives for business angels. Our priority is to see how we can give more liquidity, more access to liquidity to the startup ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I would like to turn to Mr. Bechrakis. Mr. Bechrakis, in the last years, we have witnessed the success and growth of several Greek startups that managed to establish themselves in the foreign markets and successfully transition into scale-ups. I would like to ask you, is scalability and international expansion a prerequisite for the transition of a Greek startup to a scale-up phase, and how could the Greek diaspora help in that?
Like the Minister, I'd also like to thank you, Vassili, and the Chamber for allowing us to be involved today. It's an honor for me as well, personally. As we all know, the Greek market is small. Serves an opportunity for a startup to offer a product or service that could immediately dominate the landscape in Greece. You could do that. But I think otherwise, looking at the evolution of many of the companies that have started in the last 10 years, there needs to be an outward look beyond the borders in order to really test the water, so to speak, for scalability and launch and potential of their product. The diaspora, and I include also expatriates, across this world, have a lot of experience in many different types of industries and many sizes of businesses. So scale up is not a foreign entity for us, let's say. We have that experience and we've seen it. And we know Greece as a country has been dominated. There's large industries in Greece, but it's been dominated primarily by small, medium enterprises, primarily micro businesses. So, in order for the diaspora, and we've seen some of the early successes, it has to be really a collaborative effort. The diaspora just can't come in there and say we have all the answers, and at the same time, the Greek companies can't just look to the diaspora and say, help us and do what you can to raise money and so forth. It has to be trust and mutual respect. But I think the first thing is for the diaspora that has certain levels of expertise that the startups may or may not have, or what's lacking. Primarily, you hear that what's called knowledge transfer is being able to assist startups in whatever they may need beyond the financial backing. And some examples of that is as you scale up, that it becomes more challenging to create a sales and marketing network, distribution channels, financial policies, the type of culture and the connections that you can make amongst businesses that are in the process of growing and rising. So I think there's a critical role that the diaspora and expatriates can play in helping companies move beyond the Greek borders. But again, it's coming in with the approach that what types of experience can we offer, and what types of skills or talent that may be lacking, or business activities that we may be able to offer that these companies have not had a chance to either learn yet or have experienced yet.
Thank you very much, Drake, for that. I would like to go to Ms. Hatzopoulos. Ms. Hatzopoulos, the COVID pandemic is a catalyst for major disruptions and changes in technology adoption, in workforce, in ecosystem relationships, in market structure, in consumer behavior. Are scale-ups better positioned to thrive in a radical different future, in a radical different normal?
So, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. It's a great question because disruptions are often what provide opportunities for startups and scale-ups, because the large incumbents are too invested in a certain way of doing things, whether it's new product development, sales and marketing, or manufacturing. The part that's different with COVID is that this is a temporary disruption, not a permanent disruption. Once we get the vaccine, this will be behind us. And so the big question is what will remain and what will revert back? And we don't know that. We can surmise that certain improvements will stay, such as remote healthcare, which has, finally, we've been talking about it for 20 years and finally actually doing it. Other changes may revert back, like you always want to visit your customer. You need to visit your customer. But then other changes like work from home will probably land somewhere in between. So the one caution I have is that it's dangerous to count on COVID conditions to continue forever and to build an entire business around that assumption. But having said that, any kind of disruption is always a great opportunity for a smaller business to enter into a market.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hatzopoulos. Ms. Mourla, almost 2 years ago, Athens Exchange Group, together with the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce, announced the inauguration of the Roots program, with the aim to support and accelerate the growth of innovative Greek SMEs and startups. Can you provide us a briefing of the Roots program and how it supports participating companies?
Thank you very much for the great question and primarily for the opportunity you've given me to be here and speak about Roots. Yes, it's true that 2 years ago, we felt that it was a time to actually help young companies and smaller companies to improve their understanding and their capacity to access the capital markets. Capital markets are something that scares smaller companies, and objectively they lack a lot of knowledge and resources to tackle the challenge of actually accessing the market. We believe that for Greece this is a very important challenge that we all need to address successfully. It's a great thing that there's an awful lot going on, and startups are supported from a lot of programs, and also the private equity industry in Greece is taking off. But the Athens Stock Exchange has got a long tradition of actually addressing the needs of SMEs, of small and medium-sized enterprises. This is what Greece is about. We have, as you know, sadly, not very many large companies, but a very large number of SMEs. And as we found out with Roots, a lot of them are actually very, very interesting companies. They're doing very innovative, very aggressive things that could actually help them grow and expand outside of Greece. And they need funding. And this is what Roots is actually aiming to do. We've already had a group of companies that have joined Roots. And in actual fact, there is a video in our booth here at the conference where anybody who's interested could go and hear their story, as well as the story of all the participants who've had the experience so far. Yes, it's a new thing, but a very promising thing. And so far, I think we've got very, very positive feedback.
Well done. Seems this very nice initiative, and I'm very happy to see that fruits are being produced. Minister Dimas, it is reflected in the Greek economic growth plan recently published that low levels of productivity and innovation are major impediments of economic growth in Greece. On the other hand, according to research, scale-ups are more productive and innovative than other firms and significantly contribute to employment and economic growth. What are your plans specifically focused on boosting the growth of scale-ups, given their potential in strengthening key areas of the economy?
Okay. First of all, allow me to start with a more general point, actually underlining that our policies in the last 16 months are focused in order to severely improve the business environment in the country. And that's why if you see the rankings of the Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, or the World Bank, you will see that even within our first year, we have had significant improvement, and improvement in the business environment will also affect, obviously, the scale-ups. As I said before, the Greek ecosystem currently consists mostly of early-stage startups, and of course, we want to see those early-stage startups develop into scale-ups. We do also have scale-ups also in the country. Through Elevate Greece, they will have access to tailor-made financial tools. We recently passed legislation which is active since the 1st of September 2020, where we have seen a lot of scale-ups have reacted very enthusiastically to this legislation. And it has to do with the more than tripling the financial incentive, the super deduction tax rates for R&D expenses. From 30%, we raised it to 100%, giving therefore an important incentive for companies that invest in R&D. Usually scale-ups are such companies. And by taking advantage of this financial tool, we believe that according to the impact assessment that we've performed in the Greek government, that more than 300 million euros of R&D expenses will take place in the next 3 years. So apart from these changes, we are also proceeding with policies for innovation clusters, for competence centers, and technology transfer offices, with technology transfer offices in research centers and universities, in order to try to make better use of high quality education that our scientists might have and are used in spin-offs and spin-outs, which some of them have developed into scale-ups.
Thank you very much. In order to deep dive to one of your points, you mentioned the science and technology research expenses super deduction. There is, I believe, recommendation in the growth plan to offset the tax benefits with social security contributions in order for this incentive to be more appealing to scale-ups that in most situations do not have profitability in order to be tax exempt. Are you considering also that offsetting? Because
Yes,
it's good in other countries.
we are actually highly considering it. It's one of the initiatives that we want to see be implemented within the next year. It does have some difficulties and challenges, especially during the pandemic crisis, but it's extremely important for us to proceed with such an initiative, which we really believe will be extremely useful for companies that invest in R&D and scale-ups within our ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bechakis, Drake, the startup and innovative entrepreneurship ecosystem in Greece is still young and relatively small. Recent data show that life science and especially health tech is the sector with the highest number of startups in Greece, followed by e-commerce, agro-food, and tourism. What are the sectors of the Greek economy providing more opportunities and a favorable environment for scale-ups to develop and flourish, according to your opinion?
Vassilis, there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done by firms, including yours, Deloitte, that have showed the strengths and the hidden gems within the Greek economy and with the ecosystem. But obviously, it starts with what you're good at, what you're very good at, and what you can transfer beyond your borders. So it begins with the skills and the talent you have. And you already mentioned a few of the sectors that are leading some of the resurgence outside of the traditional industries of shipping and tourism, specifically tech sectors within the technology area that are evolving, agribusiness, tourism, specifically medical tourism, is a huge opportunity. And that's the last part I wanted to touch on, specifically because of my family's background in healthcare, but also secondly, like Marina being in the greater Boston area, where the marketplace is one of the top in the world. Greeks, and I'm saying Greeks in general, not just Greeks from Apatrida, but Greeks from the United States, Canada, Australia, everywhere, are really in the medical field are the best in the world. I mean, they lead companies, they play major roles in a lot of institutions, in academia and research institutes, as well as hospitals. And you see the talent and the experience that they've developed in cities like Boston, let's say. So there's so much talent that really can be tapped, and I think the government has already started working on different initiatives where you could help further design and develop the ecosystem in Greece around medical healthcare, medical tourism, because you have that talent available to you. And it's across the world. It's just a matter of creating the right framework for it and providing the opportunity. So I think in my personal belief, there's tremendous upside in the medical healthcare arena.
Thank you very much, Dave. Ms. Hatzopoulos, I would like to ask you, the scale-up phase is typically the quickest and most significant stage of growth and one of the hardest to navigate. What are the main challenges scale-ups face, and what would be your advice to them for overcoming them? And moreover, how important is collaboration and access to global networking in boosting Greek scale-ups?
Sure. So there are two big challenges that come to my mind. The first is access to capital in the global marketplace. And a lot of times, even in scale-up phase, even with so much capital available today, it's difficult for these scale-ups to actually access. And so it's really important when you're operating on a shoestring budget to incentivize your team. And that's where equity plays such a critical role. And so that's how you incentivize your team to continue and to be so dedicated to the mission. And key to that is seeing successful exits. And that's what we're starting to see out of Greece, which is a great motivator for teams to stay involved, even if their wages are somewhat below market for a period. Another big challenge that scale-ups face is that many of the team members who were so incredibly valuable during the startup phase are just not equipped for scale-up. So that means recruiting new members, but retaining the strong culture that got the company to where it was at that point. So it might mean letting go of some of the old timers, or it might mean simply leaving them where they are while their peers grow with the company and grow with the organization. So, and in answer to your question about global networking, that's absolutely critical because ultimately, all the Greek startups already know this, but to really reach any sort of scale, you need to grow outside Greece. That's paramount. And this requires team members to focus time on developing markets abroad.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister Dimas, a couple of months ago in Thessaloniki, you signed the US-Greece Science and Technology Agreement with Mr. Kratsios, the US CTO, where you underlined the importance of this agreement in enhancing investments in R&D and collaboration between the two countries. What is the impact of this agreement, and what should we pursue to realize its benefits?
Actually, one year ago, we started discussions with the US government in the strategic dialogue in Athens, and I did point to the US government that we didn't have a bilateral agreement in science and technology. In my visit in the United States during the winter of 2019, I did have the opportunity to speak with and meet Michael Kratsios. He completely agreed with me that we should proceed with bilateral agreement in science and technology. We did hold discussions with the National Science Foundation in Maryland. They were very positive for such a development as well. And we were going to sign it in March, so within a very quick time frame in Athens with Michael Kratsios, but due to the pandemic crisis, we had to put that later on. So when Secretary Pompeo visited Greece in Thessaloniki, it was a very good chance. We did sign the agreement, and our main goal is to have a framework about how we can build additional bridges between the two countries for academic institutions and researchers. So, and of course, companies that do invest in R&D. We are quite positive that having such a framework will allow the two countries to have common projects in various different sectors. At least if I compare it with other bilateral agreements that Greece has with other countries around the world, which most of them have been rather successful. We truly believe that through this new S&T agreement, we will give the opportunity to researchers and scientists across the two countries to hold common projects in a lot of fields and help further strengthen the relationships between the two countries.
Thank you. Drake, venture capital funding remains strong even in 2020 within the pandemic, while we are seeing also global companies increasingly investing in acquisitions of disruptive technologies to keep up. What makes a good investor for a scale-up besides funds, and what role can large companies and corporate venture capital play in the scale-up ecosystem?
Well, the one thing I think that we've all seen, and it started a little bit with the last government, but certainly with the current government, it's been very encouraging to see the changes that they've made. Is really, first of all, having an environment where there's cooperation between the government, between industry, academia, investors, entrepreneurs. And we know that Greece is not there yet. It's not fully developed. but it's progressing very well. But we need to understand that these changes don't happen overnight. You need patience. It's tough sometimes to change old habits and culture of doing business, but developing SMEs is a new. It's new and transformational to Greece. Beyond the most important things, which is mentoring and networking and providing advice, advisory roles, it's important that you also see what makes a successful company. That benchmarking is very important and very critical. But for larger companies, beyond being acquirers of technology or startups, let's say, which we know that can be a positive for an economy, of course. But larger firms on average tend to be slow adapters. We know the issue with R&D and the commitment to R&D in Greece. We see that the smaller companies, the startups, are the innovators. They have the evolving technologies, but we know they don't have the capacity that the big companies have. They don't have the logistics, the global supply chain access, the distribution networks, the sales and marketing. So I think it's important for larger companies to be open, that some of these smaller companies have ideas that may be helpful to them, to their businesses. You see around the world examples in pharmaceuticals and technology where licensing and joint ventures are commonplace. But I see a more of a nurturing environment, so to speak, where small companies and big companies can work together and establish strategic partnerships. Because at the end of the day, that's going to create more growth and help the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Chatzopoulos, Greek universities are active in research while developing many well-educated graduates. At the same time, it's obvious that significant reforms are needed to connect academia with market needs and focus on the skills of the future. What do you believe it's the role of the university system in building a strong, innovative scale-up ecosystem in Greece?
Universities can play an absolutely critical role because, as we know, there is great research happening in the Greek universities, and it's just not being commercialized. So what the universities need to be doing is providing small seed grants, as small as €1,000 up to €50,000 for student teams to develop innovative new technologies. In the US, the way the model works, and it works really well, is the professors commonly will guide the technical development and take a board seat on the startup while their students pursue it on a commercial level. So the professor may be working one day a week while the students are working on it full time. This works really well, but in the early days, what it requires is access to equipment and other resources, allowing the professor to do this, and licensing the technology to the startup.
Very interesting. As I understand that we are short of time, I would like to ask a question to all of you regarding brain drain. More than 500,000 of Greeks, mostly young and highly educated, have left the country during the last 10 years. The Prime Minister recently announced a 7-year 50% income tax reduction for citizens coming or returning to Greece. Such initiatives are surely to the right direction. What would it take for the talent that has left the country to return and thrive in Greece in a word or so? And I would start with the Minister.
More job opportunities.
Okay, excellent. Drake?
I would echo that. That's beyond that. That's really establishing an economic framework that works for that attracts the talent to come back to Greece.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Seeing that there's a thriving job market beyond one single job opportunity. That's it. And seeing exits so that they are willing to take equity in their business.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's good that the barrier, because not being able to live in Greece is a barrier, is being removed, but they need to see also the opportunity for having a fulfilling career here in Greece. And we need to be able to offer that to young people who are coming back and those who want to keep here.
Concluding from our conversation, a key takeaway is that definitely innovative, fast-growing companies would be one of the pillars of paradigm shift for Greece. As discussed, scale-ups being more productive and innovative can create more quality employment and contribute more to the economy and society. Many ideas and initiatives were discussed today on how to create and foster such a vibrant scale-up ecosystem in Greece. The government commitment, as expressed by the minister, is evident on implementing relevant policies and incentives to create a fertile environment. And following our discussion, I can only be optimistic. I can only be optimistic and positive that we surely can make Greece not only the best place to live, but also the best place to start business, the best place to scale up in business, and the best place to thrive. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our speakers for their valuable contribution and insights. Thank you, Minister Dimas, Mr. Befrakis, Ms. Hadjopoulos, Ms. Mourla. And finally, I'd like to thank our participants for their attention. I thank you, and I wish you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vassilis. Thank you all for your excellent conversation. Thank you, Mr. Dimas. Thank you, Ms. Hadjopoulos. Thank you, Mr. Befrakis and Mrs. Mourla. Vassilis also. You were exact on time, and we're moving ahead with the next panel discussion, equally interesting.